So I have this list of things, like your zone of proximal development. Why? And what's the list for? It goes back to our question. What's our question? Why you're getting nothing out of church? Because your zone of proximal development, church is used as a data repository institution, which is a problem. So I want to talk about all of these, okay? But what I want to talk about first, I want to show you some pictures first, because I think the pictures will help you, okay? We're we're exploring the features. Why do I have this here? What we should be doing in a church is exploring the features, limits, and capacities of the world, right? And also striving for a meaningful fittedness with reality that is coupled with effectiveness. So I'm fitted with reality in a way where I can be effective. In other words, like if I'm playing a sport, I can move around on the basketball court effectively as a team, and I can score points, or I can assist other people to score points or get rebounds. I can do something to help win the game. And then I can do something in a series of games to help win the championship, that kind of thing, okay? So you think of life as a game, and we're in this arena. How do we become attuned to this arena? So how do we open ourselves up to it so that it can open itself up to us? And then how do we get fitted with reality in a meaningful way that results in us being more effective in multiple domains where we're actually doing something? So the problem with Christianity is this. What we should be doing, according as we've talked about in many previous languages, okay? Videos. As we talked about in many previous videos, we start off with sheltered security blanket, laws, rules, regulations, boundaries, rigidity, structure, that kind of thing. And that's like the nest. And there comes a time when you should be kicked out of the nest, and now you're exploring reality, and it could go anywhere. Now you're exploring the river of reality. And somebody else was talking about how this looks like you're looking at a river from the top, but the river also has depth to it as well. Okay, so there's multiple, very three-dimensional movement going on here. And because time is passing, there's actually four-dimensional movement. Now, the problem is let me make this bigger. Look at the top of this slide here. The Western evangelical church has gotten to the point where the only metrics of success it has are detrimental to people, not helpful. So ask yourself, what makes a church successful? When a church talks about how successful it is, what are the only things they can talk about? How many baptisms they have, and how much the church is growing, and how many new memberships they have. But what are you doing that for? Like, okay, now you have 100 new members. What's happening to them? What are they becoming? What are you doing for them? What is happening to these people? That now you have these new members. So we basically have three measures of success in the church, and none of them help anybody. They actually hurt people. Number one, down here, is persuasion. We need to persuade people to affirm the things that we think are true in our in-group narrative. And then once you start off with the affirmation of the gospel, okay, first I need to get them to affirm the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ and receive him as their Savior. And this is all mental stuff. There is no embodying the gospel going on when we're evangelizing people. Let's face it. Well, we have discipleship, and no, you don't. You call them discipleship programs, but what's actually happening, it's just further persuasion programs for the other stuff that you're adding to the gospel. All this nonsense and all your systematic theology and your statements of faith, this stuff is fit to be, it's dumb, it's stupid. We should throw this in the trash, which uses for target practice. But all it is just further and further persuasion. You persuade them of an entry level, the threshold of entry persuasion, receive this little bit of data and affirm it and commit to it in a way that we deem appropriate. And then what we're going to do for you from there, we're just going to keep persuading you of more things that you need to cognitively affirm. All right? all this nonsense. That's really all we're doing for people. And then affiliation, with persuasion and affiliation. So now I've persuaded them to affirm our core truths, and now they have come and got baptized, and they've joined the church, and they're affiliated with us. And ideally, they're attending and active and participatory of all the things that you're doing that don't matter. And then there's compliance. How many people are complying with the rules? They're, be good, be nice, don't smoke, drink, or chew, or run around with those who do. And if you're in a legalistic church, the women got to wear skirts and dresses, and you can't go to movies. And if you're a little more liberal church, you just can't go to rated R movies. There's all these. You got to comply with the rules, and the rule compliance. That's where you get your whole lordship salvation stuff, and you can lose your salvation or you can keep your salvation. All this kind of stuff comes from. It all stems out of the need to make people comply with the rules of the in-group. So these are really our only metrics of success in the church. And the problem with these as metrics of success is they don't help anybody be any better. They actually impair people. They impair people. What do you mean, Kevin? So let me add to the diagram. I think I did this in reverse order, so flop them around. Make this bigger again so you understand where we're coming from. So I've added a couple things. Over here on this side, once you've got people locked into persuasion, affiliation, and compliance, those are your 3 metrics of success. And I know there's 9 marks and all that nonsense out there, but it's still persuasion of those things, affiliation with the in-group, and compliance with those 9 marks. You see what I'm saying? So it's really 3 metrics of success, not 9. It's only 3. So what does that produce? It produces virtue signaling. It produces a lack of genuineness. It makes people inauthentic. It makes people pathologically egoic. So you have pathological egoic identity construction. So what mature religion should be doing for you is causing you to detach from the things that have formed your ego so you can reveal the real you that's underneath there. And the real you that's underneath there is like what Paul says. What are we talking about over here? Let's go to Romans chapter 7, verse 17. Paul is struggling with sin, even as an apostle. And he says, if I do then that which I would not, I consent to the law that is good, and I'm going to trust you to go to the content. We have other videos where we've looked at the whole chapter and all this. Okay? Does God hate some people? Something I think is the name of that video where we talk about this. But Paul says, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. He says over here in verse 21, I find a law then that would, verse 20. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. What this kind of religion does, this 3 metric success religion over here, persuasion, affiliation, and compliance, Mammon Church, it produces, it builds your identity on the part of you that sins. You see? Paul said it's no longer I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. What we're trying to do is peel back, put off the old man, put on the new man. We're trying to peel back the layers of the onion of the part that sins and get to the real us. And that is also connected to the casting down of strongholds, bringing every thought into captivity of Christ. It's connected with that as well. We're trying to find out who and what that thing is. So here, when you're born, you are basically born as the authentic you, and your hardware set, your body, your hardware set is a complete narcissist. Okay? That's how you're born. And then you are enculturated over the next 18 to 25 years. You are then enculturated, and that enculturation is designed to get your hardware set to stop being such a narcissist. That's what it is. Well, the problem is that while we're getting your hardware set to stop being such a narcissist, you lost who you really were because you've become attached to all the enculturation. So the second part of the second journey of life, entry into second half of life wisdom, is where instead of continuing to identify with all those things, which is the part of you that sins, we start needing to peel that back off. It's almost like a cocoon that has held us while we have ideally gotten to the point where we should transform. We should start peeling off the layers off of that cocoon and start to emerge out of it to find out who we are. Okay? So what this kind of church does, it does not help you find the authentic self and peel away the part of you that sins. It actually adds this to the part of you that sins. You see? And then this becomes something else that you need to peel away. Systematic theology, all the beliefs and doctrines, having a belief system. What are your beliefs? Who cares what your beliefs are? You didn't have any beliefs when you were a baby. You ever think about that? Baptists say they don't think people can lose their salvation. That's absolute crock. They all believe that babies go to heaven, and then at some point in time, they're now on their way to hell. Don't they? What did they lose? How did they lose the heaven destination? Every Baptist believes babies lose their salvation at some point. It's the craziest thing ever. Everybody believes you can lose your salvation. All the Baptists do. They say they don't. They believe in OSAS once you're saved. Well, they believe you can lose your first salvation. You have like a temporary placeholder salvation until what? So this I can't stress enough that what this kind of church, you're going to church and you think it's making you more holy and you're being discipled. No, they're adding things to your egoic self, to the part of you that sins, that needs to be stripped away and peeled away in order for the part of you that doesn't sin. It's no longer I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. That part of you gets buried under this kind of religion. And so now you have more junk to disassociate with, to become unattached to, so that you can be your genuine, authentic self. And this kind of stuff produces inauthentic lack of genuineness. That's why Christians are called hypocrites all the time for a reason. Okay? And the Christians that I know, the atheists that I know aren't hypocrites. They say what they think, and they do it. It's just how it is. Christians, they virtue signal what they think they're supposed to be, and they wind up not being genuine. They wind up spending years and years and years lying to themselves about who and what they are. And the more you lie, the weaker you become as a person. And so now you're 40 and your authentic self is this complete weak thing. And then you're walking around with imposter syndrome, thinking you're not good enough, you're not the best, you're not the real deal. And the reason is because you're not. You're not you. You spent your life as a lie. And the religion that we are following causes people to spend their life as a lie. And you cannot become strong that way. So then what happens? This big red star right here. Real life hits hard. For me, it was things like I was persuaded that divorce was bad. I was affiliated with an in-group that believed it was bad. I was complying with the rules of staying married until I couldn't. So my belief system, in a very practical situation, lost traction. And it lost purchase on the terrain. I no longer had traction on the terrain. So real life hits hard. I don't have the answers. And what if like I was very fortunate to, I think at that point in my life was when I actually finally started finding the Christ of the Bible. But what a lot of people do is they turn away from Christianity altogether because they realize it did not work for them. And people wind up, when things go bad in your life, You lose your job, you lose your family, you get a disease, you lose your arm. IRS is calling you up. The court case went bad and you have $1 million judgment on you. You wind up resentful, cynical. You think everything is evil and bad and out to get you, and there's no good in anything. All the preachers are child molesters. All the priests are child molesters. All the religious leaders are money-grubbing hucksters. You're cynical. Everything's bad. Everything's out to get you. You're nihilistic. There's no point to anything. What difference is it going to make if we do it this way or that way? We're all going to be dead anyway. The universe is going to come to a heat death, blah, blah, blah. And then also you start becoming psychosis. And I'm not talking about like cluster A personality disorder psychosis where somebody's schizophrenic or I'm talking about the psychosis where you've lied to yourself for so long and you're so used to entertaining untrue narratives that fuel your resentment that you can no longer perceive reality. And you live in a kind of psychosis. Now, because of that, because you live in a kind of psychosis, living this way, there's a new text box up here now. Living this way, living what way? Living this way. In a church that has these three metrics, which is all the Western evangelical churches have, it produces this, and then you get hit hard with life, and you are not equipped for it. You wind up this way. This psychosis is like a set of VR goggles. It is like an addiction. Living this way, when you are chronologically here, so you're chronologically, you should be in second half of life wisdom. But now you've taken first half of life wisdom and now you brought it over to second half of life. You're chronologically, you should be doing 40-year-old things, spiritually speaking and effectiveness speaking, but you're not and you can't. So it is identical to addiction. Somebody defined addiction as impulsive behavior that harms the things we should value. Harms the things we care about, the things that we should value. You care about your kids, right? Well, if you continue in this kind of church, your kids are going to have a rough life, and your grandkids are going to have a rough life. And your descendants that you never meet, because you will die, the descendants that come from you that you will never meet will have a rough life. And the people that you encounter, that you met your neighbor and you told them about the Lord and you had a great day and you witnessed and they turned to Christ, they will have a rough life because you're passing this garbage on to them. You're not passing Christ to anybody. You're passing this garbage to them. And then they will become this, and they will have a bunch of religious nonsense added to their pathological ego. And then they will become resentful, cynical, and nihilistic because it's not going to work for them either. And they will be living in, effectively, an addiction of a worldview that is not real, and it has them in a type of psychosis. It's like VR goggles in a virtual reality, so you can't deal with reality. If you ever played a VR game and you try to move around, real life hits you hard. Okay, you fall over, you stumble. That's why there's all these safety warnings when you start playing VR games. Because you can't see reality around you, and you bump into it and you get injured. When you put on the VR goggles of Western evangelical Christianity, you can't see reality anymore. You're living in a type of psychosis, and you bump into life hard. Bam, life hits hard because you can't see it.